It's an elite week in the world of recruiting. 20 of the nation's best quarterbacks will gather in LA for the Elite 11 finals. We'll give you a behind-the-scenes look with the man who runs the show, and last year's MVP will join us live. Plus, Oregon State, Penn State, Arizona State, and Boise State fans, listen up. A big talent could be coming your way. Find out who lands a highly coveted pass catcher. We have a live commitment on today's show. And official visit season also means crystal ball season. Steve Wiltfong has been dishing them out, and we have all the details. That and more as the college football recruiting show starts right now. Alongside our Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins, I'm Emily Proud. A reminder to submit your questions in the chat. We will answer some at the end of today's show. The only way you can do that, though, is by subscribing to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Also, a reminder, please like this video so we know that you're watching. Andrew, it is a big week for quarterbacks, but we've also had a lot of commitments so far this month. It's been busy.
Commitment season, right? I think by last count, 60 commitments over the past 2 days, 40 of them at the Power 5 ranks. We said June's going to be a big month. Well, it's here, and we still got 2 more weekends of visits to go. I
feel like we are just getting started. We're also just getting started here on the show. The time is now. The Elite 11 finals are happening this week in Redondo Beach, California. It's the best of the best quarterbacks, including the #1 player in the cycle, Dylan Raiola. The top 20 will compete for a spot in the top 11, and of course, that coveted MVP crown. Andrew, who do you have your eyes on this weekend?
Well, obviously all these guys, but I think the big storyline I'm going to be following is Dylan Raiola versus Ryan Puglisi. These are the 2 Georgia quarterback commits. Both of them are going to be out there in LA. And I think the gap between Raiola and Puglisi isn't really that big as it seems in the rankings. Right now we have one of them at #1 and then Puglisi all the way at 200. So I'm excited to see those guys compete. I'm ready to see CJ Carr, the Notre Dame commit, DJ Lagway, the Florida commit. I mean, it's a who's who when it comes to these 2024 quarterbacks, and we're ready to stack these guys.
All right, I said weekend, but the fun starts on Wednesday. Meanwhile, 3-star wide receiver Jack Ressler is making his commitment live in just a few minutes. The modern-day star has a Final 5 with a crystal ball in for Oregon. But Andrew, whoever gets him gets what?
They're getting a slot receiver that can run routes and catch the football, and he comes from one of the top high school football programs in America at Mater Dei. You're seeing the footage here. This is a guy that had over 400 receiving yards in a loaded offense this past fall. So I think he's a guy that can create separation, do the dirty work over the middle. And I think he's just someone that's also going to be able to contribute on special teams at the next level. He's a guy that can do a little bit of everything.
That's coming up later in the show. You will not want to miss it. Well, it's been a while since we've had a non-transfer portal related headline for Colorado, but here it is. The Buffs landing 4-star defensive lineman Brandon Davis-Swain, the 2024 talent, committed while on an official visit this weekend. He picked Coach Prime over the likes of Michigan, Purdue, and Notre Dame. So who is the latest add to this Colorado class?
Well, he's a guy that it's been hard for Colorado to recruit in the high school ranks. You mentioned it, Emily. They're so active in the transfer portal, but with all that roster turnover, they need some young blood on the defensive line. Brandon Davis-Swain, I saw him at the Under Armour camp in Baltimore last month. He was a top performer for us. He's a guy that has a bunch of raw power. He's still developing as a pass rusher, but I think the upside is there. I think he's a guy that can play multiple spots up front. So it's a big pickup for Coach Prime. Again, we know what they can do in the transfer portal, but they got to build that roster through the high school ranks. I think Brandon Davis-Swain, who was at one time committed to Notre Dame, is an excellent start for them in this 2024 cycle.
All right, the #1 class in the nation just got stronger as Georgia flipping 3-star running back Chauncey Bowens from SEC East rival Florida. Now, Bowens was on campus this weekend along with a pair of 5-star official visitors, KJ Bolden and Jordan Ross. But what does Bowens add to this top class?
I mean, this is a Georgia running back. Look, they want to run the football behind that big offensive line. Chauncey Bowens, he is all up 225 pounds. He's a sub-11 kid in the 100-meter dash. He's a Thunder, right? They have Dwight Phillips, the track star, also committed as a running back. He's the Lightning. And then they're also in a strong standing for Nate Frazier, who's also at Mater Dei Academy. I think he's a combination of all three of he complements those other two really well. So Chauncey Bowen's a big bruiser, college-ready frame. He can block coming out of the backfield. Nice pickup for the Bulldogs. And if you talk to anyone in Athens, they absolutely love this kid, both on the field and off the field.
Thunder and lightning. I love it. Meanwhile, a decommitment alert. Four-star tight end Tavion Galloway changed his mind about LSU last night. The 6'5" Ohio native has been committed to the Tigers since July of 2022. So what kind of talent just hit the market?
We always talk about traits at the tight end position, right? You look at the guys that are being selected in the NFL draft that go on to play on Sundays, and usually they all have extremely strong testing profiles. Tavion Galloway is just that. Talking about a 4'4" kid in the short shuttle. You mentioned his frame, 80-inch wingspan. He can block. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can generate yardage after the catch. So I think he's a complete tight end, someone that can play in line. A bit surprising to see him back away from LSU, just given how much success and how Brian Kelly utilizes that position.
Already a pretty stacked room there. It is time now for the Wiltfong Whip Around with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, let's start in Ann Arbor. That's where a lot of fun happened. Jim Harbaugh hosting quite a few blue chippers, including 5-stars Ryan Wingo and Justin Scott. Also some talent on the offensive line. So what kind of impression was Michigan able to make on those top targets this weekend?
Yeah, Ryan Wingo, the number 2 receiver in the 24/7 Sports Player Rankings, tells me that Michigan's back on his radar for sure following this experience. Been a lot of Tennessee buzz. Georgia certainly has made a big impression on him, but this time getting back up to Ann Arbor, talking with some of the commits, talking with some of the players on the team, he got a chance to see how it really is up there. And I think that Michigan moved the needle. Now we'll see what happens moving forward if he gets back for a game in the fall. I think this recruitment is going to be a marathon. He's got upcoming trips to Texas and Missouri, Colorado, Texas A&M, some of the other contenders for Ryan Wingo, but impressed by Michigan this weekend. Justin Scott, 5-star defensive lineman, said it was a good visit, enjoyed himself, learning about the program, and his favorite part was hanging out with the players, and he likes Michigan's scheme. Now, I still like Miami for Justin Scott right now, heading into his official visit next weekend in Coral Gables. I think Georgia's also a player. Notre Dame's in there, but Michigan making an impression on Justin Scott. Now, I do think there's going to be a lot of success from this weekend for Michigan moving forward. They added Owen Waffle, a defensive lineman from New Jersey, to the number 2 ranked recruiting class in the country. And I could see them landing up to 3 more prospects on the defensive line, from David Paley to Dominic Nichols to Elias Rudolph. I think Michigan's sitting in a great position for all 3 of those young men coming out of the official visit this weekend. And if you flip over to the offensive line, guys, Michigan's got one of the best offensive line classes in the country. And I think they're the one to beat moving forward for top 247 offensive tackle Bennett Warren. Why? Because he said, honestly, they're my leader right now. He compared offensive coordinator, offensive line coach Sharon Moore. He said he's like a second dad to him. He feels at home around the team, loves how the players love Coach Moore. Got to spend a lot of time with those players. And he really fits in the Michigan locker room. And certainly it doesn't hurt that they've won the last 2 Joe Moore Awards awarded to the top offensive line in college football. Michigan already has Andrew Sprague, our number 7 offensive tackle, committed. Warren's our number 5 offensive tackle. So it'd be a heck of a haul up front for Michigan, who's also trending for receiver Amarian Stewart, who's going to commit somewhere this weekend. Boo Carter has got an announcement this weekend, a defensive back that Tennessee leads for on the crystal ball, but this visit to Michigan may have changed some things. So the Wolverines, we may be talking about them next Monday on the College Football Recruiting Show, with those 2 blue chippers announcing their plans, and Michigan certainly near the top of their respective list.
Man, if Michigan adds Bennett Warren, I mean, that's going to rival what LSU did on the offensive line. We're super high on him when it comes to the scouting side. Steve, let's stick in the Big Ten. Let's head over to Ohio State. Ryan Day and the Buckeyes, huge recruiting weekend for them. You had a trio of crystal ball picks go in over the weekend. One for Marquise Lightfoot, one for Edric Houston, who was actually visiting Georgia. Those are 2 defensive linemen. Then you got a third as well. What do we need to know about Ohio State and what they were able to accomplish over the weekend?
Well, let's start with the five-star, Edric Houston. He's already taken official visits to USC, Clemson, and Georgia this past weekend, and talking to several sources with knowledge of the recruitment. The buzz favors Ohio State going into his official visit this weekend, from Larry Johnson and the pedigree he has at the position to the recent players that he's helped develop at Ohio State to the track record of the program in general. I think he's extremely excited about Ohio State going into the visit. Now, we'll see what happens as Georgia continues to bring in defensive linemen and figure out who they're pushing for, who they're not pushing for. But right now, I like where Ohio State stands with Edric Houston going into his official visit. Now, Marquise Lightfoot and Jalen McClain, they took official visits to Ohio State this past weekend, and I think they're clearly the program to beat for both of them. Regarding Lightfoot, he certainly pointed to Coach Larry Johnson. He talked about everything from the history of the program to the academics, but just the one-on-one time with the strength coach and Coach Larry Johnson, I think, has put Ohio State in pole position. Now, we'll see if an official visit to Miami in a couple weeks changes that, but I like the Buckeyes there. And then with Jalen McClain, a safety out of the state of New Jersey, he really enjoyed his time with Coach Perry Eliano, talking ball with him, getting around the players. He thought he really fit in with those guys. And so I think he's one of the next guys I have marked to be in the fold for Ohio State as they try and add to a class that's ranked number 4 nationally. And I had one other prospect predicted to Ohio State coming into the weekend, guys, Jeremiah McClellan, a top 247 receiver from St. Louis. And I still feel good about that prediction coming out of his official visit this weekend.
Steve, I'm not great at math, but I think we have less than the amount of people watching the show have hit that like button. So can you remind them what the like button looks like? It's so easy. Go ahead and smash it. Steve's just dishing out crystal balls. The least you can do is hit that like button on the video. We got some more news, though. Notre Dame welcoming a few top prospects for official visits over the weekend, most notably the number 1 edge in the country in Elijah Rushing, a guy we've talked a lot about on this show, and the number 2 tight end, Carter Nelson. So how did this weekend affect Marcus Freeman's pursuit of both Rushing and Nelson?
Well, Rushing told me that he had an outstanding time. He really liked the family atmosphere. He's got a great rapport with Al Washington, one of the top recruiters in the country. And he said Coach Marcus Freeman's always cool. I think Notre Dame's been one of the front runners in this process from the beginning. They've gotten him to campus a couple times. Oregon is a school that I'm really keeping an eye on for Elijah Rushing moving forward as well. And then Carter Nelson, Georgia's had a lot of recent momentum for him. But Notre Dame's been in the mix for a while, getting them to campus here. The family atmosphere and the coaching staff really impressed the family. The small student body, the highly demanding academics is something that is a positive for the Nelson camp. And just the tradition and history at Notre Dame, I think they really felt that aura when they were on Notre Dame's campus this weekend. He's got upcoming trips to Penn State and Nebraska, but I think Notre Dame has given Georgia a run for its money coming out of this visit. And then Andrew, I know you love top 247 linebacker Bradley Shaw. He's our number 5 player in the country at the position. He took his official to Notre Dame this week, and I think the Irish are the one to beat for Bradley Shaw coming out of it. They got to hold off programs like Auburn and Georgia moving forward.
I do love me some Bradley Shaw. I think that'd be a massive win for Marcus Freeman. You talk about Notre Dame taking that next step, right? Getting that prospect that they normally can't get. If they get Bradley Shaw, I think he's a difference maker potentially in the middle. Steve, Miami, they're looking for their second straight top 10 recruiting class after an epic haul in 2023. It was a 5-star show in Coral Gables over the weekend. You had Josh Pate down there. No, I'm just kidding. A ton of different. A ton of guys ranked number 1 at their position, number 2 at their position. Aiden Breland, Ellis Robinson, David Stone, Dylan Stewart. Just where do things stand with their top targets coming out of that big recruiting weekend?
Well, I'm excited to get your scouting report on our guy Pate, who was catching passes from Tyler Van Dyke inside their football facility there. But look, Miami, they signed the best offensive line class in the country last year. They're on a mission to sign the best defensive line class in the country this year. As I said earlier, I like where they stand with Justin Scott, who's visiting this weekend. And I think they might land a few of these guys that were in Coral Gables this weekend. The guy that I'm pointing to first is Dylan Stewart. I think that Miami is trending heavy there right now for him as he's visited a couple times this calendar year. Heard it's a great official visit. I know he loves Coach Jason Taylor and his track record as a player and as a man. And that's where he's really resonating with a lot of these visitors, Jason Taylor is. But Miami on the uptick with Stewart. You still got Georgia in there. You got South Carolina in there. Tennessee's a dark horse Ohio State hanging around, but I like Miami for Dylan Stewart. Colin Simmons, that's another prospect that Miami is on the rise for. The explosive edge rusher out of the Lone Star State. My crystal ball is on LSU. I think Miami's giving them a run for its money. You still got Texas, you got Oregon, you got the Aggies. Alabama's getting an official this weekend, but Miami moved the needle with Colin Simmons and his family. His mom pointed to Jason Taylor, Mario Cristobal and company planning out every year for Colin from the moment he arrives to the moment he goes on to the NFL draft, and that was really impressive. But David Stone, Andrew, you know, who knows what he's going to end up doing, but we know that he loves Miami. Been there 4 or 5 times already this calendar year, so they're weighing that one. I think they lead right now for Aiden Breland out of Santa Ana Mater Dei. We'll see if they can hold on to that lead. And then LJ McCray, they're battling Florida. They're battling Florida State. Georgia's getting a visit this weekend. Auburn's in there. He's one of the most coveted in-state defensive linemen for Miami, and they're certainly in the mix there. And then our colleague, Blair Angulo, Emily, your co-host, him and I, we crystal balled Elijah Lofton, a tight end from Las Vegas Bishop Foreman to Miami. And that's something that, you know, maybe he's the next one in the fold, the top 247 recruit that could be a dynamic player for them at the tight end position. Kevin Riley's another visitor this coming weekend that I think Miami's in great shape for, a top 247 running back alongside Justin Scott.
Lots of talent in Miami. We'll see if those commitments follow. Steve, we're going to pivot here because we have a lot of Oklahoma fans in the chat. Understandably, their quarterback, Jackson Arnold, is about to join the show to talk about Elite 11. But we've got a question here from Cam. Do you think that Williams and Nwaneri had a good enough visit for him to land at OU?
I think he had a great visit. I talked to his coach earlier today about that visit, and they said it was another fabulous time. It was an opportunity. He's been to Oklahoma like 7 or 8 times now. Coach Chavis and Coach Bates, those are as good a relationships as he has in college football, and those are guys that they feel he could really develop under. Of course, Brent Venables as well. So Oklahoma near the top of the list for Williams Nwaneri. I think Tennessee's right there alongside Oklahoma. They were one that I pegged as the leader recently. And then Georgia, they got that first official visit from Williams Nwaneri. The Bulldogs are coming hard for him. He is quickly becoming one of Georgia's top targets, regardless of position. Coach Chidera is doing a great job there. Georgia's track record, Kirby Smart, Muschamp, Schumann, they're all involved recruiting this kid. That official visit to Georgia was a major needle mover, and this recruitment is even more wide open than I once thought before a few weeks ago.
Steve, Elite 11 finals, they start here in 2 days. I know me and you are going to be in Los Angeles. When you look at the field of 20 quarterbacks, all but 2 of them are currently committed. So just the latest on these 2, that would be Elijah Brown from Mater Dei there, right, in Los Angeles. He's taking trips to USC, UCLA, Stanford leads on the crystal ball. And then the other one, Trevor Jackson, a kid from Orlando, took an official visit to Pittsburgh. I think he's got a trip set up to Missouri, just camped at Texas A&M. What's the latest buzz surrounding those 2?
Well, I think, as you said, Stanford's crystal ball favorite for Elijah Brown. Our colleague Greg Biggins has been all over Elijah Brown's recruitment, including the canceling of the upcoming USC official visit. And all the buzz is favoring Stanford. There's been a lot of Stanford posturing on Twitter with commitments coming. Emmett Mosley's another one I like Stanford for, top 247 recruit. But I think Elijah Brown is a Stanford lean right now going into the Elite 11 finals. And then Trevor Jackson, he took an official visit to Pittsburgh the first weekend of the month, and I thought that's where he would end up. And maybe he still will. Now, Pitt also has a great chance at the Hasselbeck kid from Massachusetts. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Pitt's class as well. So that's an interesting thing to follow with the quarterback dominoes. He was just at A&M this weekend, but I think the O'Neal kid is emerging as the major target for Texas A&M at the position there. And then he's got an upcoming official visit to Missouri. So maybe Pitt, maybe Missouri for Trevor Jackson as he continues through his process.
Steve, as always, thank you so much for all the latest intel, and a reminder that you can read all of Steve's work on 247sports.com, and a double reminder, check this out, 60% off or $1 for your first month. This runs through June 15th. That is this week, so get on it. You definitely want to become a VIP member today. Okay, so we told you what is happening in LA this week, the Elite 11 finals. Here's a reminder of who will be there. You got five-star Jaden Davis, Notre Dame's CJ Carr, also the #1 player in the class. You see him there, Dylan Raiola will be there, Alabama commit Julian Sayin, DJ Lagway, Aaron Nolan. It is the who's who of high school quarterbacks. You know who else will be there? Our next guest here on this show. So let's welcome back here to the show the General Manager of Elite 11, Brian Stumpf. Brian, so happy to see you here. It's happening. The Elite 11 finals start Wednesday, and although I assume that this process has started much earlier for you, as you think back to these events over the years, what makes the Elite 11 finals something that everyone really now circles on their calendars each summer?
Ooh, that's a great question. We hope it's an amazing experience for the quarterbacks, and then it's something kind of over the years that the word of mouth spreads. And as these guys in the next class are going on their visits and going through colleges and talking to guys there, the college guys that came through are passing it down. I think that's ultimately our goal for this, is that it's a once in a lifetime experience for these quarterbacks to come in, compete together on the field, which is a lot of what you guys see publicly facing, but really the off the field development that we try to lean to, and the opportunity for these guys to form real connections with each other throughout the event, that really serve each other moving forward as a peer group, where they have problems, they have issues, they have successes, and they have this unique peer group that they can share with moving forward as well.
Brian, it starts on Wednesday, right? It's going to go through Friday. There's going to be 3 different workouts. You said it. That's what the public sees. That's what we see. But can you take us inside? What are these quarterbacks going through from the time they arrive and meet with you guys to the time they leave? What's that process like for them?
It's really pretty packed. We used to do more days on this event, and I think we might have to add a 4th day next year just to try to get in everything we want to do. But we really try to go through the gamut, and it starts pre-event. As soon as we locked in the 20 quarterbacks that we're going to be attending, we sent them out our playbook concepts, which are close to 25 different plays and concepts of plays that they'll be using for the 7-on-7 for the event. So we really want to give them materials that are college to NFL level passing concepts. Allow them a chance to learn them. They'll get coached by it from our coaches, and then take it to the field on the final days of Elite 11 when we're doing 7-on-7. But then, we're going to lean in as well on some other stuff off the field. We have a great children's cancer group, for example, NIGU, that we've worked with for close to 10 years, and really show these guys the opportunity they have with their platforms to embrace this influence that they're going to have, whether they like it or not. The things that they say are going to be powerful moving forward, and they can really change their communities and the world that we live in. And so, getting them interactions like that to try to, I think, help them understand what's in front of them. And ultimately the goal is to give them tools to hopefully be successful moving forward. And that's both on and off the field.
It's fantastic. Sounds like an all-inclusive trip for these guys. The top 20 finalists, of course, battling for a spot in the top 11, and then the very prestigious MVP crown. So I hope some participants are watching, because I'm going to ask you, Brian, what are some of the things that you and your team look for in those 3 days to help make those decisions? Yeah,
it's a great question. And it starts with this, and we always get the fun reactions on social media when we post the MVP award. But really, the basis of it is truly what they did on the field in the fall as a quarterback. That's what helped to get them there, and that's always going to be the foundation of their grade. But what we're looking for at the finals is the ability to compete on the field, under the brightest lights. And we're not in pads or anything like that. But we want to put them in challenging situations and see how comfortable they are being uncomfortable, as we talked about, learning some new plays and new concepts and materials. How do they take that to the field? How do they interact with their teammates they're going to be working with on the field? We have a pretty good group of skill players coming in. It's the all-22 skill player group that'll be working with them and doing 7-on-7. How do they handle these alpha receivers coming back to the huddle and saying they want the ball? They don't care what the play is. Give me the rock. Situations like that these guys are going to be in moving forward in college. So it's performing on the field. And then the last part of being an Elite 11 quarterback is really how they embrace all the off the field curriculum, and how coachable they are and adaptable to new materials, because all these guys are here because they're talented. The guys that are really going to make it and survive, and not only survive but thrive at the next level, are the guys that are open to receiving new information and are adaptable enough to implement it into their game and keep improving.
Brian, I know a lot of college recruiting departments, their eyes will be on the Elite 11 finals. It's a unique competition, right? There's nothing really like it. A lot of fans are going to be watching. We're going to be watching. A lot of focus will be on that 11 and whoever you guys crown as MVP. But, just what can kids take from this, and how do they apply it to maybe their first collegiate start? What's the feedback been from some of your alums and just what they can gain from this week, aside from the competition aspect? I mean, what can they pull away from this event?
I think, again, it's hopefully tools that allow them to, when they get to college and there's so much going on, give them tools to hopefully be successful and hit the ground running. I think emotional intelligence is something we talk a lot about, and how they're going to, manage their time and asks that are being made of them at the next level. And so really it's the stuff that we want them to be open, and we see it in articles leading up to the event. Guys are saying they're going out for a business trip, or, it's time to compete and there's no friends and things like that. Our philosophy is really the opposite. We want them to be open to everybody at the event, whether it's our coaches, it's the other quarterbacks that they can learn from, and really take everything you can from this event, so you can add it to your toolkit moving forward. And ultimately, the goal of this, and why it was founded in 1999, is this is the most difficult position to play in all of team sports, and we wanted to put on an event that allows kids that have shown great ability to this point to get everything they can out of it, and hopefully help them be more successful at the next level.
Brian, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on our show. Hope everything goes well this week. Thanks again.
Thank you, guys.
Be sure you are subscribed to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. It's important all the time, but especially this week, it is the best way to guarantee that you don't miss any of our Elite 11 coverage. We'll have coverage from LA all week long, so make sure right now that you are subscribed. So you heard Brian roll through the factors he looks for when naming the Elite 11 Finals MVP, and last year this guy had those qualities in bunches. Now Oklahoma freshman Jackson Arnold was last year's winner of the coveted Elite 11 Finals MVP. So who better to talk about what this experience is like as a player than the MVP himself? That's right, Jackson Arnold is joining us here on the show today. Jackson, really excited to talk to you about this experience. I mean, you really shined at last year's Elite 11, as evident by being named the MVP. But when you go back and think about those 3 days in LA, what stands out to you about your experience?
I'd say overall, I guess the people I met, whether that was coaches or other players, I'm still in contact with guys that I competed there with. They, like Coach Stumpf just said, people come in thinking it's a business trip, when in reality, they encourage you to, join this brotherhood and connect with all these other players, because those are the guys you're going to be playing against in whether the next year or the next 2 years. So I'd say connecting with the players and also the coaches too. Like, these coaches have played at all the types of levels. The head coach now at the Elite 11, Coach Nall, he played at the NFL. So meeting guys like that and just learning from them and their past experiences was super helpful for me as I transitioned to college.
Jackson, last summer there was a ton of top quarterbacks there. Obviously, you were there. Your time in Los Angeles, how did it help you put together the senior season that you did, and then you enroll early at Oklahoma, go through spring practices, make some plays in that spring game? So, what did you take away from LA and your time there?
Just the ability to compete at a high level. I've always been a super competitive guy, but going against all the other top quarterbacks in the nation, just having to grind and work my hardest at the camp really taught me to compete at the highest level, which is something I'll definitely need for my college playing days.
All right, not to add some extra pressure, but I mean, you look through the list of former MVPs, there are Heisman winners, there are first-round draft picks. I mean, considering all those past winners and the guys that you were competing against last year, I mean, Jackson, what did it mean for you to be named the MVP?
It meant a ton. As you said, the last, I think it was 15 out of 16 Heisman winners competed at the Elite 11 or Elite 11 regionals. So just looking at that past history of people that, attended and won the camp it's a remarkable list, to be honest. And just to be, a part of that, just to be a part of the fraternity, the 11 fraternity itself is an amazing accomplishment, but to win it is just that much more special, and it means that much more to me.
Jackson, obviously you went through 3 days of competition. You made all the throws at Pro Day. You did the 7-on-7. You did all the off-field stuff Coach Stumpf was talking about. What's your advice to these 20 finalists as they get on the plane, fly out there, and prepare to compete?
Yeah, first of all, I'd say just, connect with each other. Those are going to be your best friends for the next 3 or 4 days, however long they're there. Make relationships with them, lasting relationships. Like those guys, they'll tell them, the coaches will tell them when they get there, these guys could be the guy, like the best men at your wedding, so make good connections with those guys there, stay in touch with them. And two, second thing is just give it all you got. They do evaluate some of it off your junior film, but the other half is based off your camp performance. So leave everything you got out there. Don't hold back. Just go out and compete.
I love it. That's great advice for us as we go through the rest of our days. Jackson, thank you so much, and best of luck in your freshman season this year.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to pivot to some viewer questions because you guys have just been submitting them all over the place. So, Andrew, we're doing this first one here from T. Chambur. Andrew, is there a prospect or two that you're going to be watching closely during those aforementioned Elite 11 finals? You're headed that way soon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be watching all 20 of these guys, right? That's the point of the event. We're getting ready to tweak our quarterback rankings. We've been waiting for the Elite 11 finals just because we didn't want to make a move and then have our opinion change, a month later. So I have thoughts on all these quarterbacks. But, one name I'm excited to see in person throw, DJ Lagway, the Florida commit. I have a round one grade on him, having gone back and studied him. I think he is a lottery ticket with a massive payout. I mean, the traits, the tools, his physical frame, his arm strength, there's not many in this class. And I don't know if this is the type of setting where he's going to excel. He's a true dual threat talent. He's excellent in the open field as a runner. And this is a stationary event. Stumpf said it, there's no pads. So this isn't really his rodeo for him to shine. But if he were to shine, right, if he were to match throws with Dylan Raiola, CJ Carr, Elijah Brown, I think that's going to say a lot about DJ Lagway. So I'm fired up to size him up, just see how he handles himself. And the other thing I like about DJ Lagway is he's continued to improve. You go from his sophomore season to his junior season, completion percentage goes up almost 12%. I also like the athletic profile, multi-sport kid, could play baseball in college if he wanted to. The College World Series getting ready to kick off here. DJ Lagway, he could have played at Texas A&M, LSU, baseball there. And when you look towards the guys that are getting selected early on in the NFL draft at the quarterback position, a lot of those guys were multi-sport athletes. So DJ Lagway for sure, he is one that I have circled. I think the other one is CJ Carr, the Notre Dame commit. He is knocking on the door of 5-star status in our rankings. I've had some exposure to him this offseason. He really impressed me in Orlando at the Overtime OT7 event. He's got a prototypical frame. Obviously, he's got some strong bloodlines. Lloyd Carr is his grandfather. I think everyone knows that name. Big fan of what he did late in his junior season in the Michigan State playoffs against Bellevue. I keep telling our analysts, if you have any questions about CJ Carr, you need to pop on that tape from that playoff game. He's a bit streaky at times, but when he's on, he's on. And CJ Carr, to me, I think he's going to show up with a chip on his shoulder. I remember 2 years ago at the National Combine in San Antonio, we were just kind of chopping it up at midfield. I didn't know much about CJ Carr. But I walked away from that conversation thinking, hey, this guy is a competitor. He knows every other player on the field. He's ready to prove himself. So I think this is an event where the cream rises to the top, right? You can't hide from anyone. And I think CJ Carr is going to embrace that. Those are two guys. I could keep going on and on and on. Listen to the 24/7 Sports podcast that's coming out on Tuesday. Me and Cooper Patagna, we go full in on the Elite 11, and we're going to have full coverage from out there. So there's a ton of arms I'm looking forward to seeing. Lagway and Carr, two at the top of my head right now.
Yes, that is the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. You can listen wherever you get your podcast. Yeah, we have so many things to get to on this show, including a live commitment from 3-star wide receiver Jack Ressler. That is coming in just minutes. But you guys have all the time in the world on your podcast to talk about the Elite 11 finals. So I'm sure you run through all of these guys. We've got another question here from Sean Nelson asking, do you think, maybe there's a relation here, do you think Carter Nelson could stay in state? or we'll go elsewhere like Georgia or Notre Dame.
Well, I think Georgia is going to be hard to beat, right? Kind of my rule of thumb is do not bet against Todd Hartley, the tight ends coach there in Athens. And I know he lost Landon Thomas to Florida State. He's already got 2 tight ends committed, Jaden Riddell, who is a freak talent in his own, and then Colton Heinrich, who is literally a 15-minute drive from where I'm taping this. They got those 2 in the boat, but Georgia, they're going to take the best player available, right? We've seen them stack talent at the running back position. We touched on it at the beginning of the show, them taking Chauncey Bowens. They already got Dwight Phillips in the fold, and they're going after Nate Frazier. So they're going to keep reloading. And I think Todd Hartley is going to recruit Carter Nelson until the very end. If Georgia has an extra spot, he's going to stand on that table inside the war room in Athens, and he's going to say, hey, I need this guy. And if you're Kirby Smart, anyone else, Mike Bobo in that recruiting department, I mean, how are you going to tell Todd Hartley no? Look at what they've done at the position. Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky, they're very excited. So I'm going to keep an eye on Georgia until the end. But I do think Nebraska has done an excellent job from what I've been able to read. I have no inside information there. I think Matt Rule, his pitch, hey, I have got a ton of guys to the NFL. I went and I worked in the NFL. I think that can appeal to a guy like Carter Nelson, who is playing 8-man football there in Nebraska, right? This is a guy, it's a sticky, tricky evaluation, but we love the player. There's a lot of colleges that love the player. He has a one-of-one track profile. He can jump out of the gym. His dunk highlights, if you go on his Instagram, are insane. He's just a unique, special talent. So I think Nebraska's in there, and then Notre Dame. I mean, Steve Wiltfong touched on it here a little bit on the front end. You know, they have a rich history of tight ends as well. So I think those are the 3 schools. You know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would keep an eye on Georgia and then probably Nebraska. And then I think Notre Dame is behind those 2.
A lot of great options for him. Yeah, it's hard to bet against Georgia and tight ends, but Notre Dame has a bit of a history, as you mentioned, as well. This next one comes from Russell S. asking, what's your take on Mike Matthews' potential fit at Clemson if that's where he decides to go?
Well, I would love it. I mean, we talked all last week about Clemson and their wide receiver room, what they were able to do, getting Bryant Wesco in the fold, TJ Moore from down in Florida. Look, I think one of the issues with Clemson, and maybe it's not that big of an issue, but when Clemson had things humming, that wide receiver room was elite. And I remember a time covering recruiting when, you know, Clemson would offer a wideout and was like, all right, well, this kid's probably going to go to Clemson because this is wide receiver U. And it seems like in recent years, we've kind of got away with that. Was that because Jeff Scott left for USF? Maybe. But Jeff Scott's now back in Death Valley. He's in an analyst role. And I think if you take Mike Matthews and you pair him with Wesco and TJ Moore, I mean, it's going to be hard pressed to really find a better wide receiver class than that. Now, I know Ohio State has an epic group committed, so, you know, but I think it could rival that. Mike Matthews, you know, I actually kind of like him early on in the process as a defensive back. He's kind of built himself more as a wide receiver here, but he's raw and he's full of upside. He can track the football. He can get down the field. I always talk about the multi-sport backgrounds. This kid has an opportunity to play hoops at the next level. His father played basketball overseas, so he comes from an athletic family. I still think there is plenty of meat left on the bone with him. I mean, what we saw from him as a junior was encouraging, but his best football is definitely ahead of him. And I think he would complement, again, Wesco and Moore well if he were to pick Clemson.
A lot of 5-star wide receivers this year, too. I mean, it seems like an absolutely loaded group of guys, and Clemson so far has been landing quite a few of them. But as you said, yeah, Ohio State's always in the market for some 5-star wide receivers. This next one comes from Kenny W. asking, how high are you on TCU commit House Haney headed into Elite 11?
I can't wait to see him, right? House Haney, you know, there's a ton of support for him behind the scenes when we get into these 24/7 sports scouting, you know, meetings. And Haas Henne was a guy we talked about a lot last week. Now, he is not going to blow you away with his measurables. I mean, he is under 6 foot, might be under 5'11". But this kid is a competitor. When he was a sophomore, he played wide receiver, right? He finally gets the chance to be his team's starting quarterback, loses his first 2 games, but ends up rebounding and rattling off, I think it was 15 straight wins to win a state title. He's a dynamic athlete. He is a 10-6 guy in the 100-meter dash. Both of his parents actually went to TCU. His dad played football there. Mom ran track and played basketball. I was reading some story. A young Haas used to be eating peanut M&Ms in Gary Patterson's office when he was a kid. But I think this guy is a gamer. Obviously, he's electric with the football in his hands, ran for over 1,200 yards. But when I got in there and really studied and break them down, I was impressed with the deep ball. And I think he's going to show up in Los Angeles. I don't think he's going to back down from some of these more high-profile quarterbacks. I think he's going to look forward to matching throws with Dylan Raiola. I think he's going to look forward to matching throws with Jaden Davis, Aaron Noland. Pick your quarterback. I think he's a bit of a bulldog. So I'm really excited to see him. He reminds me a little bit, and I keep bringing up this player comparison of De'Aaron King, right? De'Aaron King, who started off his career at Houston, was playing a little wide receiver, actually returned a pair of kickoffs for touchdowns, eventually gets the call at quarterback, is magical there in the AAC, ends up at Miami. Never got really a shot in the NFL, but he did play in some of the other leagues, and now he's a coach. So I think he can be a sensational player on Saturdays. I don't know about Sundays. Size is the big thing. That is always going to be the knock on him, but he's a fun to watch, and I'm looking forward to him competing in LA.
All right, you've talked a lot about Elite 11 and who you're excited to see. I want to bring in our national college football recruiting analyst here in Greg Biggins to talk a little bit more about it. Greg, you're over there on the West Coast getting ready for it. We have you on today to talk about Jack Ressler's commitment, and we will talk about that once we are able to get him on the show. But before we get there, I mean, you're in LA, you're going to the Elite 11 finals. Who are you most looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, there was 2 guys I told you, I think you and Blair a couple of weeks ago. It was Aaron Nolan, just because he's like a perfect kid, right? I was waiting for this guy walk on water, great job of parenting. So I want to see that release. I want to see the arm strength. I want to see how he competes out there. And then obviously, Andrew Ivins kind of stole my thunder. I like CJ Carr a lot. I think we have him rated 5 or 6 right now. But for me, I think he definitely should be in the discussion. From what I've seen, some 7-on-7 tape. I love the release. The stroke is super pure. The game just looks slow and easy for him. I think he could end up being a top 1, 2, 3 guy by the end of this week. I don't want to jinx the kid, but I think those 2 guys, Nolan, Carr, I'm super excited to see up close and in person this weekend.
Yeah, and Greg, to kind of piggyback on that, obviously I've spoken a lot with you. I've spoken with different people on the recruiting team, and Aaron Nolan, as much time his name got in this, over these airwaves and a few months ago, it seems like he's kind of like the forgotten guy heading into this event, right? You mentioned the lefty. One of the metrics out there has him with the fastest release, and then you kind of dig into the resume a little bit. He's thrown for more yards than any of the quarterbacks that'll be in Los Angeles. He's attempted more passes, thrown more touchdowns. This is a guy that thrives in the pocket. That's where he kind of lives. He is a pocket passer. And I think the last lefty at the Elite 11 finals was Tua Tagovailoa. Am I wrong on that? Or he's the last high-profile.
Former MVP.
Not a bad guy to be comped to, and I'm not saying we're comped to, but Tua, and we talked about this obviously. Elite 11, they score a little differently. Tua was number 20 out of 20 going into that final, so he had to leapfrog 19 guys, get that MVP, walked away with it. Obviously, Heisman Trophy first-round pick. So can Aaron Nolan follow in the footsteps of Mr. Tua Tagovailoa? We'll see. I think the kid's really talented. I just love the body of work. Again, listening to Brandon Marcello talk about book and just how he takes notes and the parenting job, and I was just blown away by his whole body of work. So I want to see how he throws the football, and that's a huge stage, so it should be fun.
Yeah, I know that Andrew and the rest of the rankings team and everybody that follows recruiting has been watching Aaron Nolan play football for a while, but I felt like that was our official introduction to him as a player and as a person. So if you have not checked out that piece from Brandon Marcello, head to 247sports.com to read it. He is an impressive young prospect. A lot of prospects that you've seen go through Elite 11 finals over the years, Greg. I know on our previous show we pulled up a great throwback photo of you there in the late 90s, earlier on, and in the early 2000s too. I mean, you've been a part of this organization for a while, so I'm just going to ask you, do you have maybe a favorite memory of your time working Elite 11?
It was all good. And the times of, I feel like the event has changed radically from the first couple of years where we didn't get it. I say we, student sports, I still kind of say we. But there wasn't near the evaluation done. The first year was Brock Lynn and a bunch of other guys that were local Southern California kids. And then now there's a rule. You have to see everybody in person. You can't just go off of film. 7-on-7 component came in, ESPN came in, Trent Dilfer kind of, made it a little bit more of a production, right, than just a quarterback. We used to keep media out, ironically. Those first 4 or 5 years, media was not allowed to be in there. And the reason was these guys are going to be put in situations, uncomfortable situations, right? We didn't want them to be critiqued or judged based on doing some drills they'd never seen before. And so we kept media out. We didn't want anybody to write a bunch of bad things about any of these kids. And so just, again, being a Rams fan, I'm a little partial to Matt Stafford. I think he was probably the best quarterback I ever saw at that event. And then just recently, I love C.J. Stroud, and I love what he was able to do. Again, kind of, people see him now as, first rounder and, a top 10 pick. He was not a guy going into the opening. He had offers from Baylor and Boston College and Cal, and not discounting those schools at all, but he didn't have Ohio State, Georgia, UCLA, USC, the 2 local schools weren't even on him. So he kind of blew up playing with Bryce Young on that same 7-on-7 team. So I love seeing that. And obviously Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, I think Andrew mentioned that as well, man. Again, that was probably the best singular performance I've ever seen. And not using hyperbole, I think Justin might have had more incomplete passes, might have had more touchdowns than incomplete passes. I mean, he had some radical 90% completion percentage. And it wasn't just, touchdown. He made NFL throws as a high school kid at that event. Clearly overshadowed Trevor Lawrence. And there was a lot of talk, hey, Trevor, Justin, does Justin overtake him? And I think we might have even bumped Justin over Trevor just for a little bit before he went back to Trevor. Obviously, that proved to be, a good call. But, man, Fields and Stroud, again, a couple of Buckeyes, those 2 guys definitely stand out for me. And talking about most recent events.
It's great. It's funny you say that, right? Kids always talk about their ranking and whatnot. I love to point to the fact that, hey, like spring before his senior season, Justin Fields was a 3-star. He finished it as a 5-star. It ended up getting selected in the first round of the NFL draft. CJ Stroud, same case. I'm like, if you are worthy of the ranking, don't worry, it's going to let itself play out. No, I remember that Justin Fields versus Trevor Lawrence, and I always tell this story, so I'm sure people are tired of hearing it, but this is back when the Elite 11 Finals was at Nike's campus there in Eugene, Oregon, and we were statting the games. I was just a young buck. Like I was just doing what I was told to do, stat games, but everyone was fighting to stat Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Fields in the 7-on-7. I think every Nike employee, because the field was in the middle of campus, I mean, and they just traded throws. It was awesome to see. And then you fast forward a few years down the line, both those guys playing at a high level of college football, both first-round picks, and now obviously they are franchise quarterbacks. So that was fun. Another lasting memory for me is when it shifted to the star in San Antonio, Anthony Richardson. I was down on the field taking photos, and he did a standing backflip. I was like, whoa, okay, this is kind of impressive. And then they had the long ball toss, and he throws it 73 yards, topping C.J. Stroud, topping Bryce Young. And it was just having that in my head, right? And then we get to this past NFL draft with the pro days, with the scouting combine, and NFL scouts are drooling over Anthony Richardson. And I think he did the exact same stuff at his pro day in Gainesville. And it's like, well, we already knew he could do this. We saw him do it at the Elite 11 Finals. So, it's fun to always have stories like that. And we're actually running a round table on Tuesday, and we're highlighting a few different things. And it was fun as I was assembling it to read yours, Brandon Huffman's, just Steve Wilfong's. Everyone has kind of different memories that they remember from the Elite 11 Finals.
I'm excited to see all the storylines that come out of this year's Elite 11 Finals, but we have some business to take care of here on the show. It is decision day for 3-star wide receiver Jack Ressler, and before we get to him, I want to ask you, Greg, you've watched him very closely. Steve Wiltfong has a crystal ball in for Oregon for him. Where are you leaning as we are now minutes away from hearing where he's headed?
Emily, I never want to give the answers to the test away, right?
No.
You mentioned Steve. He's got him looking at Oregon. If Steve's the guy, right? So if Steve likes him there, then I'll probably piggyback him. But I don't ever want to give away too much. But, how about, let's see. Let's find out. I'm curious myself. So let's see what Mr. Jack Ressler has to say.
Okay, but can you maybe peel back the curtain a little bit about his commitment? Oregon's not the only team that has interest in him. So what can you tell us about this journey to get to where we are today, which is the decision?
I will say this, Emily. I will say I think it's Oregon, Boise State. I think those are the two that kind of maybe separated from the pack a little bit. Oregon State was in there. Penn State was in there. ASU, Arizona State was also in there. But I just think he felt most comfortable with Boise State and Oregon. Those are the two schools he visited the most. Those are the two schools that he visited the most frequently as well. So, Jack, he's a guy, he's been banged up the last couple of seasons. I don't think we've seen how good he can really be. And obviously, you play at Mater Dei, they go 10 deep at receiver. So you're not going to put up, 80 catches for 1,200 yards in that offense just because you're having to, play behind and with a lot of other guys that are also Power 5 prospects. But, for me, and he's got some talent. He's got a dog mentality. He's a tough kid. The stage is never too big. I think he's an ideal slot receiver, catches the ball really comfortably. He's got a strong body. He'll catch the ball through contact. He'll take a beating. He'll never flinch from it. And, I think his best football is definitely ahead of him. I mean, he's a high school kid. That's obviously but I do think
some of the kids are tapped out. Some of them are tapped out.
That is true.
Not
that is
Jack,
true. Some
though.
guys max out early for sure. I don't think that's Jack, though. I think, again, injured the last 2 years. Senior year, I know he's really excited and gunning for having a big senior season. So I'm rooting for him as well. Really good kid, easy kid to root for.
All right, let's waste no more time. It is almost time decision day for three-star wide receiver Jack Ressler. The Mater Dei product was part of a national championship team as a sophomore and is coming off a junior campaign where he caught 42 passes for 534 yards and 4 scores. The California native has a Final Five of Arizona State, Boise State, Oregon, Oregon State, and Penn State. And he is joining us live to make his official college decision. Jack, this is obviously a huge day for you, but I have to say selfishly, one of our favorite things to do on this show is a live commitment. So Jack, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, before we get to your commitment, tell us, what were maybe some important factors that went into this decision?
For me, definitely a family feel, somewhere where I can walk in that door and just feel at home. And the schools that were on the table for me, I felt that very much so. And I feel like with all the schools I have on the table right now, not only can I be a better football player, but I can be a better man and can set me up for not only football, but for life after football.
Jack, obviously, you can't do this all by yourself, and we see some people behind you. Just who would you like to help thank you for this journey and getting you to where you are right now?
I mean, first off, I'd like to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Without him, nothing's possible. I'd also like to thank my family. Without them, nothing's possible as well. And they helped me so much along the journey. And that's a very hard question to answer because I have multiple instrumental people in my life. And I've just been very blessed to have a great family, great coaches, and great teammates, and just have great people around me to help lift me up.
Certainly a tough question to answer. It does take a village. All right, the moment that we have all been waiting for. Who will Jack Ressler pick? Let's find out.
I'm announcing my commitment too.
Jack Ressler thrives for competition.
Hands-wise, he's right there with Amon-Ra St. Brown.
He's a great leader. The way he's pushing, you never had the coach's effort.
Jack's going to give you a D1 rep every play. Whatever college he goes to, he's going to help the team. He's going to put himself in position to get drafted in the NFL.
My wife early on said there was something special with Jack in football. He was a little kid, probably 5 or 6 years old at that point.
And I always slept with a football. It might sound weird to some people, but I always had to be close to one, and that was my true love.
I took him to the first practice. I was just trying to wear him out, really. He was fire, like ready to unleash a lion, but as a child.
I met Jack when he was 11 years old. I started throwing the ball to him, playing catch, snag after snag after snag after snag, and the kid did not drop the ball. Speaking with Don and Ginger, your son is gifted. He has a future in it.
That's what opened up our eyes to think that he could really, go far in the sport.
The first time I saw Jack, I was at a Super Bowl for the Inland Empire Ducks at the time, and they were playing some team from Cerritos. So I was in the stands going down and telling them, you got a double 88, you got to take that guy out of the game, he's killing you guys. He just beat him single-handedly.
What stood out for Jack was his burst. He was a touchdown waiting to happen. That connection from Nico to Jack, it was a good sight to see. Jack will come in and kick for us. Jack had a leg. He could be a field goal kicker. So he carried us basically in that Super Bowl. He scored 3 touchdowns. We had a great comeback in the second half. We eventually won it all with the White Mamba. White Mamba was born.
He scored every point in that game. He scored the touchdowns as well as the extra points.
Whatever my coaches ask me to do, I'm gonna get it done. Doesn't matter if I'm in the backfield, doesn't matter if I'm kicking off, doesn't matter if I'm kicking an extra point.
I was coaching in the Under Armour All-American game, and I was watching this kid come out there, he's running smooth routes, snagging the ball out the air with his hands, making big-time plays. And this is an 8th grade kid. He's coming up after every practice. What can I do better? How can I do this? And he would do it, he would practice it, he would apply it.
13th year, he ended up playing for Levi Vagana. Elijah Brown was our quarterback.
Right off the bat, they hit it off. On and off the field, they're inseparable. Jack, as a player and a person, the grind is real.
He got on the field and he started running some routes. And you could just see how explosive he was already at that age. His demeanor really kind of says a lot about him. He owns his space. You had an idea that he was definitely going to stand out.
And I sat down with Jack to choose an 8th grade team. I said, if you go play for the Ducks, I don't know how many balls you're going to catch. That team was loaded. He said, I want to play with guys who are going to make me become better.
So our 2019 team, a lot of people say it's probably the best youth football team in the history of youth football. 500 offers on that team. Jack's just great at doing the little things, and he does the dirty work. Jack is the guy that's going to know the playbook. He's going to outwork everybody. He's going to be in the weight room before everybody's there. He's going to make the block that springs the run. He's going to impact the game so much more than just running routes and catching the ball. Like, he just does all the things that a lot of kids don't want to do now. He makes big catches. I remember that year, I think he caught like 60, 70 balls. If he touched his head, he caught it.
Jack was a cornerstone of that team amongst amazing talent. They won the Battle National Championship, AYF Championship, FBU National Championship.
He just like our rival. They got up on us 13-0. We just couldn't get the offense rolling, and Jack made 2 big catches for us. He had a big 3rd and 20 and made a great catch. The other big factor was our kicker mentally kind of lost it, and Jack went in there not practicing, not nothing, and kicked 2 extra points for us to win that game. I think we ended up winning 14-13.
College coaches started to notice then that, hey, this kid's a 14U, but he has a special talent, and some offers started to come in then.
As long as I'm on the field, the game's not over. I knew people were watching me, so I knew things were gonna start heading to the next level. And I just had to keep getting better every day.
Size is great, all that stuff's great, but at the end of the day, I'm looking for specific characteristics in people that make them different. I look for guys that compete hard. I look for guys that would rather chew their arm off than lose. I need to get this guy, Jack Ressler.
Jack Ressler's right in that category of some of the outstanding players that we've had come through our program. That's saying a lot.
What I first saw in Jack, one was the commitment. As soon as he decided he wanted to go to Mater Day, he was calling me like crazy, I need to get ready for Mater Day.
Jack played varsity as a freshman at Mater Day, which is really unheard of. The only guys I really know that have done that and actually played was Matt Grudegood. He's one of the best high school football players to ever play the game.
Jack does well as a sophomore. We win the national championship. He had an outstanding junior season.
Versus Santa Margarita, he caught a couple passes up through the middle, took a couple hits, stayed balanced, broke a couple plays. He's a very physical player.
Yes, sir, 8-8. He's going to have an unbelievable year this year and leave his mark on Mater Day football.
Going into Jack's senior year, the expectations are high on Jack. We expect him to have a big year. We're going to be moving him around on the offensive side of things. He's going to be working a lot of different motion. He had a lot of input into what we wanted to do, along with Elijah and our offensive coordinator. You know, he's sneaky good at times, too. There's so many things that have happened over practices and games that I've seen that have kind of put me in awe. Literally fearless going across the middle. He's got great bounce. He's got great acceleration after the catch. He's hard to take down.
20 years I've been doing this. Hands-wise, he's right there with Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's probably about the best compliment I can give, and it's a competitor, too.
Jack is very like St. Brown in that they love to work, they work hard, very dedicated, but very task-oriented.
The effort, the preparation, whatever school that Jack chooses, you know, they're going to get elite level talent every Saturday. You can count on Jack Ressler.
One of the best things about Jack is that he's just a very nurturing, caring player. He really does care about his teammates. He cares about his coaches. He's been a leader in the locker room. He's been a leader in the weight room. He's been leading on the field through spring.
A leader is definitely someone who is always there for his teammates no matter what it is. It could be football related or it could not be football related. I would say you have to be accountable. You have to know right from wrong.
He's just a great kid. I think the sky's the limit for him.
He has set himself up for success and the opportunity to choose where he wants to go to school.
There's nothing better than seeing your child achieve things that they worked really hard for.
Life in 4 years. Dear self, I'm glad you're enjoying high school. I can see that football is doing great things for your family, also that you're making a name for yourself, representing your last name Ressler. Take your time with life, because life is amazing. I hope you're 6 foot or taller, but it's not about height, it's about heart. Although you're doing well now, you still have to make the most important decision in your young life, and that is which college you will be attending.
Jack Ressler said he is looking to announce his college commitment in early June. He has a top 5 of Boise State, Oregon, Penn State, and Arizona State.
Choosing a college is the one time in your life as an athlete that you have a choice.
So what's the right fit for Jack? Took time because he wanted to take time, and inevitably he has to decide.
But there was something in him that said, hey, I want to commit right now. So he got Mom on FaceTime.
I'm just looking forward to see where this all goes.
All this has led to my commitment. A commitment to a school I've been dreaming about ever since I was a little kid. I'm announcing my commitment to the University of Oregon.
He was on campus with Brandon Baker, with Aiden Breland this past weekend, and was talking about how his relationships with Oregon just keep getting better and better. Loves his relationship with Dan Lanning.
It was kind of a no-brainer for me as I started to think about it. I'm always going to keep striving for greatness. I've always dreamed of playing for Oregon ever since I could remember.
Jack is capable of everything. He lives with intention. He doesn't hesitate. He manifests it, and he goes after it.
To see Ressler on Jack's jersey, it means a lot to me for a lot of reasons. He wants that name to mean something. That's who Jack is.
I've always played on the biggest stage all my life. I've never shied away from it. I'm gonna bet on myself.
All right, there you have it. Oregon is the pick. Jack, big congratulations on your commitment to the Ducks. If you could see our chat right now, the amount of duck emojis that are in there, a lot of fans are watching. So talk to them. What kind of player and what kind of person do they now get to root for?
To all the Duck fans, I like to say you guys are awesome. I felt the energy at every game that I attended to and on campus. I'd say that they're getting a special player. They're getting someone that is consistently striving to get better and someone who sets a great example, not only on the field, but off the field as well. They're getting someone who will do whatever it takes to win and win at a high level. I would say I'm the best kept secret, and hopefully fans are going to appreciate that and soon be cheering for it.
I love it, Jack. Congratulations again. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of this big day for you. I know that a lot of hard work went into this day, but I'm sure you agree with this. The hard work is just beginning. Appreciate you again.
Sure. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, so Jack Ressler adds to an already epic Oregon class here. Top 5 class for Dan Lanning. He is the 4th wide receiver in this group, joining top 247 wide receiver Jordan Anderson and 4-star Dylan Gresham. Also, another big pass catcher in A.J. Pugliano, the #1 player in the state of Oregon. For more analysis on Ressler and Oregon's recruiting class, let's welcome in our national recruiting analyst, Greg Biggins. He's back with us. We've also added Eric Scopel from Duck Territory. Hello. Greg, I'll start with you. Oregon, the big winner for Jack Ressler. Ducks now a top 5 class, 16 total commitments. So how was Lanning able to land the modern day product?
Yeah, he told me he's been a Duck fan since he was 8, 9 years old. And wearing an Oregon jersey and a T-shirt everywhere he went from that time. That's always kind of been, the school for him. And I like what he said about betting on himself. I think a lot of people probably see that wide receiver core. They're still in the running for Ryan Pelham, Gatlin Bear, but he's definitely feels like he is that level of a prospect, and he can play at that highest level. That's why he chose modern day as well. So not just about the dream school. He took several trips to Oregon over the last couple of years. Said he really connected with Junior Adams, the wide receiver coach, loves Dan Lanning, loves the fans, loves that atmosphere, believes that Oregon can win a national championship. That's a big deal for him as well, coming from Mater Dei. So kind of all those things kind of tied in, made the Ducks a pretty easy choice in the end for him.
Yeah, and I think for Oregon, this player makes a ton of sense. I know he's right now at least one of the more lower rated prospects, but Oregon has done a great job of, I think, finding players that fit what they're trying to do offensively. New offensive coordinator Will Stein being there. I think you look at him and sometimes you want positional versatility. I kind of like the fact that positionally he's pretty projectable in terms of he played a lot out of the slot in high school. I think that makes a lot of sense for him now. And if you look at, as Emily mentioned a moment ago, this is the fourth verbal commit at the receiver position this cycle. Jordan Anderson, Tyseer Denmark, Dylan Gresham all kind of project as outside receivers. I think you look at Ressler and say, okay, he could be a guy that can have a lot of success, very productive in the slot, and showed that already at Mater Dei. And I think at Oregon, that could be a path maybe to some early playing time.
And Greg, we have made it known that Ressler is a Mater Dei product. The Monarchs, of course, are a factory for talent. Lanning is hoping to add some of his teammates in 5 stars Brandon Baker and Aiden Breland. So all the Duck fans saying quack, quack in the chat right now. How does Ressler's commitment maybe affect the pursuit of those two?
I mean, throw in Nate Frazier. I think Oregon's probably in the top 3 for all 3 of those Mater Dei kids. Brendan Baker, Aiden Breland, 5-star players. Nate Frazier, for me, a top 5 running back nationally, a special talent. So, no, Jack's a very popular kid, a very well-liked kid, and he's already taken unofficial trips to Oregon with those guys. So you can best believe that Jack and his family will be recruiting those kids very, very hard. And I mean, I think Oregon would have had a great shot with Breland, Baker, and Frazier without Jack Ressler. With Jack going there now, I think it probably doubles. I think they got a really good chance to run the table with all 3 of those guys. I mentioned top 3, so it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Eric, wanted to ask you, you go back to the 2023 cycle. Oregon had as good a finish as anyone in the country. They've parlayed that into a ton of success here in the 2024 cycle. Obviously, they recruited well when Mario Cristobal was there, but, you know, things feel different when Dan Lanning now running the show. I mean, how has he kind of changed how Oregon has recruited?
I think there are some subtle differences that I'll get to in a moment, but I think the big thing is he's maintained that early aggression, right? And you see that right now with Oregon leading the Pac-12 in ranking, but also 16 verbal commitments. Only Stanford has more than 8, I think, in the conference right now. And Oregon is really one of the few schools that is continuing that kind of full court press early. You see that a lot nationally. There's a reason Georgia and Michigan are at the top. They have a lot of verbal commits. They're very, very aggressive. Like Oregon, I think, has continued to sort of take some of what Dan learned at Georgia in terms of being aggressive, what was already working at Oregon with Cristobal in terms of already showing that aggression and being really aggressive early on in cycles. And, you know, if you want to get a little bit more specific to a player like Ressler, like I think the way that they've approached has maybe shifted a little bit, where it's not just position coach and maybe one coach that has a status in that region. You know, for Oregon, obviously Junior Adams is going to be involved with Jack Ressler as the position coach, but there's a bunch of different people that have been involved here, and it's really become a group effort here where it's not just going to be the position coach, a couple of guys who maybe have some ties to the region or the high school coach. It's an all hands on deck effort. And with Ressler in particular, I think you probably saw that come together with, Will Stein, obviously trying to build the relationships, but obviously Junior Adams, as Greg mentioned.
Eric, Greg, thank you so much for both being here on this exciting day. Jack Ressler is now a Duck, which means you need to head to Duck territory for all things Oregon recruiting and everything that is happening with the surging program. You can read all of Eric's work, again, duckterritory.com. Thanks so much for being here on the show. As a reminder, on your way out, go ahead and hit that like button if you have not already, and be sure that you are subscribed to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. This is just the beginning of an epic week here as we continue to cover the Elite 11 finals. For Andrew Ivins, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.